Hello and welcome to Star Wars Connection. My name is Lee, and today I'm here with Denise.
Hello, everybody.
And with Mary.
Hi, guys.
And we're going to be talking about one of the most exciting days in the fandom ever. We're going to be talking about the new EW cover stories that have come out today. They are basically profiling pairs of characters that are going to be featured in The Last Jedi. And guess who got paired together? Rey and Kylo Ren. Yes. So we're also going to be talking about the articles that were featured in the spread and also the other pairs that were featured in the other covers, because it's a series of covers, and we have a Finn and Rose cover and a Luke and Leia cover, which is really exciting. And we have a Poe and Holdo cover that we're going to talk about a little bit towards the end. So why don't we jump right in? Guys, first of all, reaction to what happened today. Like, for me, it was like the day that I walked out of The Force Awakens the first time, and I was just full of like joy and wonder. I think it was just fantastic. Like, it was like Christmas for me. What about you?
Well, I've had a very bad day at work, so let's just say this, it was so good. It just cheered me up. It made my whole day.
Yeah, for me, I think I've been predicting this, but for me, I didn't like to see the picture that we're gonna comment later of Rey there, because I thought it was too spoilery. I'm like, no, this is getting too much. So I was happy and sad at the same time.
It shocked me to see that. I was like, I cannot believe that they've just shown that. Right. I think it also means that, you know, we all kind of predicted that scene in the official trailer where Snoke is torturing Rey. I think everyone kind of predicted that might be in Act 3, or at least at the end of Act 3. I don't think that's the case anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, actually we were thinking, when I did the one with Irina, the podcast on the trailer, we thought it was more closer to the end of the second act, because then later we had more stuff later, and then she has her bruise and everything later. We had also pieced that together in talking about it as a group, because of the fact that it seems like Act 3 is where everybody joins up on Crate. One thing I love to see, and by the way, before we go on, guys, if you don't want to be spoiled, you probably don't want to be listening to us right now. Just wait until the movie comes out. Denise, bye. Denise is going to make a sacrifice because we need her analysis. But it really is surprising that they went ahead and they showed that picture of Rey and Kylo, or somebody who looks very Kylo Ren-like, behind her, because we had sort of speculated that likely Kylo Ren was going to be present for her torture scene with Snoke, but now we know for a fact that he is. And it seems like they arrived there together, because although there hasn't been any confirmation that Kylo Ren is going to be on Ahch-To, I mean, yeah, we're pretty sure that he's going to be on Ahch-To at some point, and there have been leaks right about it. So at some point, you know, does Kylo Ren hitch a ride with Chewie and Rey on the Millennium Falcon? Because we see a scene of Rey and Chewie, and Rey's wearing her final costume in the Millennium Falcon. So, you know, is that how they get off Ahch-To? So there's still lots of questions, but we're kind of piecing more things together. I was surprised, like I said, that they showed it, but at the same time, what it tells me is that there are bigger twists in store that they're confident about, so they're okay with showing us this much, but it's still kind of shocking. One thing that I found interesting is her face in it, that some people speculated that maybe he would betray her and take her to Snoke, but her face is very determined and doesn't look like the face of someone who was betrayed or who was taken or who's a victim. So there's the possibility that she's there of her own accord, or maybe they both together decide on this plan, and maybe that's when Luke say this is not going to go the way you think, and he's probably going to be right, because they cannot defeat Snoke right now.
I am going to say, I don't know whether it could be, you know, we were all speculating on whether Kylo comes to Ahch-To, and as you said, Lee, there have been leaks with those photographs of Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver and Mark Hamill in Ireland in May 2016, I think it was. But I'm going to say I think Rey goes of her own accord. Of course, all the pieces aren't there, but I think, you know, Kylo Ren does end up on Ahch-To. Rey learns something about him, perhaps, you know...
In the hut, Mary, when they talk in the hut?
Yes, in the hut, definitely in the hut. And Luke doesn't like it, obviously. But
no.
I think Kylo Ren then leaves, leaving Rey, you know, torn between her loyalties, you know, to Luke and, you know, like what she's just found out about Kylo. She'll obviously feel compassion about him, and maybe she'll probably, you know, think, maybe she'll even be a bit like Luke was in Empire Strikes Back, you know, when he said to Yoda, "Oh, I'm ready now. I need to go and rescue my friends from Vader now." perhaps she'll be like that and go off to find Snoke to try and persuade Kylo Ren to come to their side. Because what makes me think this is in the trailer, you had that shot of Kylo standing looking out at that window over that observation deck where it was raining, and then in the Awake TV spot you see a shot of his face kind of looking like sort of confused and surprised, but it's the same scene because you see the rain falling behind him in the background. So I'm wondering if Rey gives herself up and Kylo hears about this and is surprised, and of course he goes into Snoke's throne room. And that's where she is.
That makes a lot of sense, Mary, I think. I still think that there's a possibility. Yeah, definitely, because, the timeline just doesn't add up, because Kylo's scar is healed and his hair is shorter, denoting passage of time when he's looking out on the hangar in the scene you're describing, and he looks shocked. A lot of people were assuming that maybe that was when he saw the Force vision that eventually led him to Rey and to Luke, but it really should have happened much sooner than that. Mm-hmm. So I'm thinking that you're right, and that eventually he just went back on his own. He came probably close to defecting, but then he decided to go back to Snoke, and then Rey maybe is going to go rescue him.
That, or he's looking at his reflection and he thought, God, those bird nuns gave me a terrible haircut.
But another possibility is that they did leave together, like to confront Snoke, and they were just so arrogant, thinking that, because they've got the raw power, that they can team up and, go in and kick Snoke's butt. And then it obviously can't happen that way because it's only the second installment of the trilogy. So Snoke can't be dead now unless there's a bigger bat. So there's still a lot of possibilities, but I'm thinking definitely Kylo and Rey are going to end up teaming up. And we've seen hints of that. We've been talking about it for a long time, but more so now that we've received these new confirmations with the EW feature.
Yeah, I think so too. And also there's things that we're going to talk about later, but it seems that they spent some time together filming, so they're going to have a lot of screen time together, meaning that, and also I do think that he goes to Act 2 based on the evidence we had, unless him going to Ireland was a, misdirection, but I doubt it. Yeah. So I think since it would be very strange if he went to Act 2, unless he goes to Act 2, something happens and she says no, and he goes back and then she changes her mind. But I think it's a little bit convoluted. It would make more sense if they come to an understanding for them to leave together. But yeah, it could be that things go differently. But yeah.
Yeah, I agree. There's something that I have to say now that we're talking about Kylo arriving on Ahch-To. I have to give props to our team that did that. The Jedi Garden of Eden with Rey as Adam and Kylo Ren as Eve and Luke as the angry god. The more that we piece together, the more it seems like they were really onto something. Like their analysis was spot on. All these shots of Luke with the books and the tree of knowledge. There seems to be some kind of conflict between him and Rey, where Rey wants to gain more knowledge. He doesn't want her to have it. He thinks that she's dangerous. And it actually says so explicitly in the article that we're going to discuss now that actually Luke's actions are going to drive Kylo Ren and Rey towards each other. And that although they're going to be reaching out to each other in a way that's confrontational, like they want to fight each other, it might be that they end up finding common ground, because they are two sides of the same coin, right?
Just to ask this, didn't we predict something like this in our Luke podcast as well? I can't remember.
Yeah, we talked about Luke as a not 100% good guy, or a person with good intentions but who's making a lot of mistakes. Somebody that we're going to have a hard time rooting for 100% like we've always done up until now. So it's going to be hard for Luke fans, I think.
Yeah, well, I have to say it does make sense, because I can't remember if I mentioned this in the Luke podcast or not, but Rey, him rejecting Rey, not only because he sees similarities between her power and Kylo Ren's, but it makes sense for the story because Rey has already had a father figure in Han Solo, and for Luke not to kind of reject her, it's kind of like, the same thing all over again, and you'd probably, have Luke die at the end of that. It would provide no conflict for the story at all.
Yeah, the article talks about that.
Let's dig right into that. I have it actually pulled up. So it opens with, he hates her, this girl, this garbage picker. So it just talks about how Adam Driver was discussing how he thinks that Kylo Ren feels about Rey. And he's saying about how the feelings are conflicted because on the one hand, he's angry at her and he feels maybe even a little hatred. But on the other hand, he admires her and he can't help it because he's been used to being kind of like a Force prodigy with no one else matching his level. And then all of a sudden, this girl comes out of nowhere and she's a force to be reckoned with. So it says that part of him fears her, part of him admires her, and and there's maybe something else.
Yeah, I wonder what.
When I read that, I was just like collapsing, like, oh my goodness, it's happening. Because we've been talking about it. I mean, of course it makes sense. The way that The Force Awakens is set up and with what we've heard of The Last Jedi, it makes sense that it would occur that way. But it's so nice to see it kind of confirmed in a way. And then it talks about Rey on her part. She doesn't really care about Kylo, it says here. Like, she doesn't really think about him all that much. And can I just say, I just love that dynamic. I call it the boys over flowers dynamic. My K-drama that's like awesomely bad, but just amazing too. And I'm gonna talk about it later. I don't want to veer us, of course, any more than I already have. But it just, I think it's fantastic the way that they're approaching it, that Kylo Ren and Rey are kind of against their better judgment and against their own wishes. They are just going to be thinking about each other and coming together in that way. Because I think it does justice to their characters. It's not like being struck by Cupid's arrow and all of a sudden you're madly in love. That wouldn't be realistic. But anyway, the fact is that Rey is indifferent towards Kylo Ren, and it isn't until she comes across Luke Skywalker and faces his rejection, and she's so disappointed. And that's been brought up in many different ways over the last month. They've been saying that Rey is very hopeful in showing up in Octo, and then Luke is very mean. We saw his face. He looks just really grumpy and mean. He doesn't want to be disturbed, and he just rejects her. What's been more interesting to me to note is that it's not just rejection because he doesn't want to deal with her. It's actually that he's a little scared of her, and he's seeing things in her that remind him of Kylo Ren. So he's kind of thinking that, here we go again. There's a very interesting complexity there. One thing that I've been confused by, and I don't know if this is intentional misdirection on their part or not, but at one point Rian Johnson said that the heart of this movie was going to be the relationship between Luke and Rey. But actually that's directly contradicted in this article that came out today, where in fact it says that it's the relationship between Rey and Kylo Ren, their push and pull, their conflict, their similarities and their differences, and how they affect each other, that's going to be the heart of The Last Jedi. So I thought, that's in line with what I've been expecting, but again, just so awesome to see it written down. It's not just coming from my head canon,
Yeah, and I find it interesting that they're going to say that their relationship is going to be at the heart of The Last Jedi, and their relationship has an element of being romantic from what we see from the hand. So if their relationship is at the heart of The Last Jedi, and if it is a little bit romantic, how is it that there's not going to be a central romance? I say that it's BS, but from what we're getting, it really goes against this idea that no, they're not going to be central in their relationship. The idea that we might have gotten from that Vanity Fair article, and I think it was wrong and it was really misinterpreted, because it really seems that it's going to be central to this movie at least.
I'm going to be very honest here. Don't get me wrong, I love Reylo, but I don't think it'll be the central romance in The Last Jedi because the characters haven't gotten to that part yet. Rey probably hates Kylo for killing Han Solo. I can't remember which article it was, but Daisy Ridley said, she doesn't understand why he did what he did.
It was in the EW previous feature.
Thank you. And she because obviously she thinks he had a loving family. Kylo, of course, he's salty about her carving his face into, even though he does express admiration for her. So this film, I think, will be the build-up. It will get the characters to that point where they can have a romance, and I think the romance will be, fully or at least way more explored in episode 9, because that's when they'll get to the point where they can do it. For me, I think the central romance in The Last Jedi on its own will be Finn and Rose.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so.
I have to disagree, Mary. I think that, remember that there is no central romance. So when I heard Ryan say that, because I don't think Ryan would outright lie, I think that he's actually really good about being as honest as he can be. So when he said there was no central romance, my understanding was that they couldn't get Kylo and Rey to that point realistically because of everything that has to happen between them. And so they're not going to be it. And then Finn and Rose, they haven't even met yet, right? Finn's still in a coma as we speak. So things won't develop develop that quickly between them for it to be central to the story. Because I think that's one of the things that's been so challenging about piecing this together, is that what does that even mean? You have to first like operationalize your terms, right? When you're trying to figure out what means what. So what does it mean to be a central romance? My understanding of that is that it's a romance that without it, you can't have the plot unfold the way it's supposed to. And it doesn't seem like with Kylo and Rey, their relationship is central to the plot, but not as a romantic relationship yet. So I agree with what you said earlier, that it will be Reylo, but it's not going to get far enough for it to be like everything that's happening between these two people is because they love each other. No, it's happening because they have this connection. So it's kind of like the seed that's later going to blossom into this gorgeous Reylo flower in the final installment.
A gorgeous purple flower.
Yes, purple flower. Juicy purple flower. Well, it's going to be a spectrum, right? And so we're not going to get all the way there, but we're going to get on our way.
Which is why, I'll be honest, I think Rose and Finn, maybe the correct term I'm looking for is maybe more obvious, because I know they haven't met yet, but there's still enough room for it to be more in your face, for a lack of a better description.
So you mean like they're going to be like the overt couple?
Yes.
But not like they're going to be the key storyline?
No. Obviously a lot of the general audience and a lot of fans too came out expecting that Finn and Rey was going to be the big romance in the sequel trilogy, and what's come out, it's looking more and more that that's not the case, which is why they've gone I'm very surprised about this. I think they've kind of gone maybe a bit too overboard with everything about the Rey and Kylo dynamic, because before, I think it was just after Celebration when I think Lucasfilm really started to talk about it, but before then there was absolutely nothing on it, nothing. And I think there have been some negative reactions in some corners of the Star Wars fandom to the idea of them becoming anything more than enemies. So I wonder if Lucasfilm and Disney have just gone, screw it, let's go all out on this, because some people are missing the message.
I think that you're spot on, Mary. Like, I think that they had a very abrupt change in their in the direction of the marketing. Initially, they were probably going to try to keep it under wraps and have it be a big shock, but probably as they were kind of monitoring what was going on online and eavesdropping on people, they noticed that there's a lot of hatred towards Kylo still, and that a lot of people just don't see these two characters ever having anything more in common than hating each other. So they really went all out in showing people, well, yes, they're actually more similar than you think, and maybe actually Kylo does have things to offer Rey, because that's always been one of the arguments that people make, people who are kind of short-sighted in that way, and they say, why would Rey ever want to do anything with Kylo? Like, what can he offer? Well, he has plenty to offer, and we're seeing signs of that already in the marketing. I don't think they want to leave it to people to sort it out in the movie theater, because then the backlash would be extreme, I think. So I think they're being smart about it.
What I actually think is that they planned it for the trailer, because they only revealed it really in the trailer, and when that last scene came, it brought the house down, and it wouldn't have done that if they had been. So it wasn't after Celebration, they had a little bit of a hint of that in the EW.
Think so, because remember that Ryan talked about it pretty explicitly. He said 2 halves of a whole, and we saw their clothes on the floor, and all that happened
but before
the trailer.
But it was a few days before the trailer. So I think it was the moment when they said, let's go.
Yeah, no, it wasn't before. I think they were building up to it, but so that it wasn't such a shock. But Ryan had already been giving quotes for like 2 months, talking about them,
I wouldn't say 2 months. I would say maybe 1 month. Maybe my memory is bad, but...
But I mean, I think that's pretty significant. It's not out of nowhere, Like, a lot of people were expecting to see something in the trailer because of the way that Ryan was talking about them,
Yeah.
I did not expect that hand, the hand scene at the end of the trailer at all. Like, I fully expected them to fully market Finn and Rose's romance for The Last Jedi. I just thought they're going to keep Reylo completely under wraps and anything between Kylo Ren and Rey under wraps.
I expected a grand gesture, but not that grand of a gesture.
Yeah.
I'm still in shock over that hand.
Yeah.
Guys, let's talk a little bit more about the article. We kind of left halfway off, and then we'll circle back to Finn and Rose later. So regarding what they're saying about each other, Kylo Ren is talking about Rey as somebody that he's interested in. He still has complicated complicated feelings towards her. He's angry at her, but he admires her and he feels like there's something connecting them. Then Rey is angry at Luke and she feels this darkness in her, and Denise and I talked about that quite a bit in the trailer analysis, that pushes her to seek out Kylo Ren. They kind of seek each other and they're starting from a place of conflict, but it sounds like, and the article is pretty explicit about it. The heading for this part of the article is Two Unstoppable Forces, and it talks about how they're kind of colliding into each other. Rey and Kylo Ren are reaching toward each other in combat, but each one could also end up pulling the other to his or her side. And then the way that the wording is for some of this is pretty remarkable. It talks about them in a very passionate way. It talks about the push and pull and the effect that they have on each other, the fact that they're so similar in many ways, but also in conflict, they're at opposite ends, but they might end up becoming allies. So very, very strong wording there. And then we have this picture of them together. It's like, oh my goodness, we've seen so much awesome fan art, but now we actually get to see them together.
Yeah,
so
you mean the cover? Yeah, you mean the cover? But also the cover and like how she is protecting him again. Everything we see, it looks like she's the one protecting him.
Exactly.
So I don't know. Maybe she goes to Snoke to save him or something. I don't know. I think something has to come out of that dynamic of her.
For sure, because we're seeing her in every picture. She's guarding him, right? Protecting him. So that's actually one thing, and I'm just going to share my little theory with you guys. I think that it says in the cover that's Kylo Ren and Rey together. The title of that issue is it possible that Rey is going to fall to the dark side as a result of her connection with Kylo? I mean, that's what they're trying to put in your mind, that's going to happen. But to me, that's a very clever way of playing up people's anxiety that's out there about the fact that when Kylo Ren reached out to Rey, people saw it as the dark side reaching out to Rey, and they saw her as being tempted by the dark side. They didn't see that as a personal interaction at all, which is very interesting. Denial is not just a river in Egypt. People don't want to think about these two people as connecting on anything other than their roles of good girl and bad guy.
I will say my mother is a perfect example of this. She is as general audience as they come, and her reaction when she saw that scene at the end of the trailer is basically pretty much what a lot of GA members are thinking. So I'm looking forward for this to turn. She was like really, really scared that Rey would join him and turn to the dark side. So I think a lot of people are just kind of expecting another Luke and Vader, where it's just like, they want Luke will just join Vader, so Rey will just join Kylo. Again, it's kind of like, oh my goodness, Star Wars is, ever since that big I am your father reveal, everybody's got to be related or just got to just be tempted to the dark side. No, I think it's going to be much I don't think she'll even be tempted by the dark side. What I think she'll be tempted.
She's tempted by him.
Tempted by him, but in not only like in a romantic way. I think first she'll be tempted, or at least torn, like I said before, between her loyalty to Luke and perhaps how his ideology, and then when she hears about what the truth of how Kylo fell to the dark side and what Luke's role in that is, she'll be just conflicted between that. So maybe in some ways the light could resemble Luke and the dark could resemble Kylo, except it's not actually falling between the two. It's kind of like trying to connect the two and see if she can resolve it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a good theory. I also think from what we got the hand scene, he's shaking and quivering. I mean, that's not how, tempting to the dark side. Usually you have this temptation of power, of, it needs to be something tempting. It's not someone shaking, like, and insecure because he's insecure, because it is a personal thing. It's not him offering something awesome, which is what we have seen with Vader, or even with the Emperor, when he tempts, it's a temptation for something that seems to be very powerful and from someone who seems to be very secure. And that's not what we have in the trailer. It's personal. So I don't know how people see that, but if they're, if they want to see it, that's how they see it. But it's definitely
that's
personal.
actually what I was getting at earlier. The fact that people are only looking at whenever Rey and Kylo are together as, oh my God, Rey's in danger of falling to the dark dark side, and Kylo's going to try to harm her. But they're not looking at the other piece of that dynamic, which is Kylo Ren is in danger of being seduced by the light, which is the thing that he's most afraid of. And Rey is probably going to end up protecting him, because that's what all these images of them in that positioning is foreshadowing to us. And I think that by highlighting that in the marketing, that aspect of, oh my God, Rey may fall to the dark side, they're very cleverly hiding that twist in their dynamic, that it's probably going to be the other way around. Probably going to be Kylo who crosses over to Rey.
That's brilliant. And I think it's the visual storytelling podcast. Props to them, because, in that the famous interrogation scene in The Force Awakens, Rey is bathed in light while Kylo is bathed in dark. Like, she's the literal temptation of light to him.
Exactly. And he's like, oh, I'm not going to be seduced, whatever. Famous last words, Kylo.
We'll see, buddy.
So one thing that, I'm glad you brought that up about the visual storytelling podcast in The Force Awakens, because it tells you that these themes were set up from the start. I mean, I love Ryan now more than ever.
Can I share like a little theory with you? You were saying about how, there has to be something there. He has to offer some kind of temptation for her. I don't think, because, we've said before, Luke's going to reject her. He's not going to be the teacher for her. So, obviously, I think she's going to go to Kylo as a means to teach her, because he's been through the same situation as her. If Luke's reaction to her is anything to go by, because he sees the same raw power in her. And again, I don't think that's not a temptation, because she will be feeling compassionate for Kylo Ren at this point, because she's found out what's happened to him. So she's going to take him up on his offer from The Force Awakens, I think, there and then. It's no temptation. What temptation I think is going to happen is, and this is just my personal theory. Do you guys know what Rey's special powers are in Battlefront 2?
Yeah, she can disorient people.
Yeah, she can sort of kind of disorientate and mind control them. And apparently, as if you're playing the game, the player's controls are also scrambled. And in The Force Awakens, when she mind tricks that trooper, I think it's going to go deeper than that. I think she's going to struggle with mind control powers. And so there are two ways I can see this. I think Snoke will offer her a temptation, and a temptation which I think she's going to struggle with in Episode 9. Now, I think there's two offers. One, he could teach her about her mind control powers, but I think that's a no-go, because Kylo can easily try and tempt her that. But as it says in one of these articles, Rey just wants to help people. And as I think this is something that The Force Awakens had as well. She has no clear motivations in the story as of yet, her own personal motivations. All she's waiting for are her family to come home. And also, Snoke is the main bad guy of the sequel trilogy. She has to have a personal connection to him for it to make sense to why she wants to fight against the First Order. So I think he'll tempt her with some personal, history about her lineage or her parents, because I think he needs to have a hand in her parents' death or disappearance or whatever it is. And I'll be very surprised if I think it'll be a missed opportunity if he doesn't have anything to do with her parents' disappearance and not offering it.
I think it would be more interesting if Luke were the one who was responsible. And I think that part of the conflict between Luke and Rey might be also like an ill-timed revelation about her parentage. And then maybe Snoke offers to complete the picture for her. And, he has to be able to tempt her in some way. I don't think that Kylo Ren is the real temptation for Rey. I think that he's going to be her lifeline, actually. They're going to be a lifeline for each other. That's the way I'm looking at it being set up. I think Snoke is going to be obviously the real danger.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think in terms of parentage, just a little bit off topic with the Battlefront, I wouldn't want Kylo to have been involved in the murder of her father, because her real father, because they already have a lot of stuff to go over, and there is the killing of Han Solo. If we know that somehow he had some hand in the disappearance or in the killing of one of her family members, I mean, I know love can overcome everything, but there's some limits. So I would rather he was not involved in it. But if we had Luke, like you said, involved in her family, it would be interesting. But yeah, like you said, Mary, maybe Kylo knows, and that's something that maybe he could offer. But I agree with Lee. I don't think it's about her family. It's more about herself and who she is. And we know that her family is not going to be that important. So I wouldn't think it's going to be that much important.
Well, important in this movie. But what you're referencing, Denise, for our viewers who haven't been keeping up with those kind of maybe spoilers, that the theory that Rey's parents parents are characters in the new Battlefront 2, and that people are piecing it together because they had a daughter and the timeline kind of fits that maybe this is Rey. I think that would be very smart from a marketing standpoint to kind of tie in all the products and the storylines. But at the same time, I don't, it's not my preference. I'd rather that it wasn't somebody that had prior dealings with Kylo Ren as a kind of bad guy, because I guess he interrogates the dad.
Yeah, and then
it's not nice to him. Rey already has enough that she has to forgive him for. I don't think we need to add anything more. I'm with you, Denise, in that regard.
Yeah, not to turn this into another Rey's parentage podcast, but I think it would make a very interesting parallel if Rey scared her parents with her powers, with her raw power, and was dumped on Jakku, and that would be like a really interesting parallel to Kylo Ren, who, his powers probably did scare his parents, but they cared enough about him to like send him to Luke to try and help him, control these powers, whereas Rey's parents didn't. They just left her.
Yeah, I agree, and I think it ties in. It's possible it ties into how they're parallel and how they're gonna find each other and maybe need each other and sort each other out together, which seems to be the heart of the plot, which seems very interesting.
I like the sound of them sorting each other out. So going back to Kylo Ren, it talks about Kylo Ren's fall to the dark side, and I actually expected to hear this. They're basically saying that part of the reason why Kylo Ren was vulnerable to the dark side was because he felt neglected by Leia and Han. And I know you didn't want that, Denise. You didn't want like the parents to be involved, but for me it kind of made sense that they had to play a role, either because they actively screwed up or because they weren't there to prevent whatever happened with Snoke. So it says, Driver says Kylo began to turn against his mother and father because he felt they cared more about the rebellion and rebuilding after the fall of the Empire than they cared about him. That created a bitterness that ultimately consumed him. So he says, someone whose parents are very much devoted to the cause, that's something that a lot of people could relate to, whether it be religion or politics or business. Not identifying with that cause yourself, I think, can give someone a complex. So he's saying, that basically Kylo was maybe resentful towards the resistance because of how much it took away his parents from him. And I'm hoping this is all as a kid, because it wouldn't make sense as a 20-year-old. So very interesting little tidbits there. And then it doesn't mention Snoke really, but we know that obviously Snoke was already influencing or trying to influence Kylo from an early age.
That's just, the perfect opportunity for like Snoke to kind of manipulate Ben in turning against his parents.
Yeah.
I really hope they still do go with the Snoke groomed Ben, very early on and was watching him, because this just fits into it perfectly.
Yeah, and I think they will because of Leia's comment to Han, that he was always there from the shadows from when Ben was little. The article then goes on to mention that, according to Adam Driver, Kylo Ren is still trying to understand whether what he did was right, which really, obviously it wasn't, but he's still confused about it, and he felt hopeful that what he did to Han was going to help him, but it didn't. He felt worse, of course.
I think this is really going to tie in with that famous scene in the trailer where Kylo has, he has his guns on Leia's flagship, but yet he hesitates. I think, of course he's going to be like conflicted about Han Solo's death before, but I think the possibility of the idea of also killing his mother, I think that will really, really wake him up to like, and he has this, oh my god, what have I done moment, to killing his father. I think that would be a pretty good way to like make him really wake up, the idea of killing his mother along with his father, and that's what's made him realize, I can't do it. I've made a terrible, awful mistake.
And we've kind of been wondering if the scenes are really, staggered in that way. Probably not, but maybe. But it's still, obviously, there's something there between Kylo and Leia, and there might be forced communication, because we know Leia is very receptive to that communication. She did that with Luke even before she knew about the Force. So I'm interested in seeing that play out. I'm a little bit disappointed, honestly, that, because not everything is perfect with this EW, I didn't see any mention of Leia and Kylo. So I'm also wondering if maybe that's part of because they're obviously concealing. They're not going to show us everything. So whatever they didn't mention is something to wonder about. So maybe that's a good sign that they didn't mention Leia and Kylo Ren.
Do you think this might point towards a Leia and Kylo reunion in Episode 8?
Yes. I'm hoping, but I don't know.
Oh, there's that picture. I forgot which picture. It's a picture from the behind the scenes, and we see someone who looks like Leia, and there's Kylo there. Kylo in that room that looks like the room of the Resistance. So I think there will be, and I hope that there will be, because I'm going to love it.
I hope so, for sure. I'm more hopeful now about Luke and Leia meeting.
Oh, yeah. I'm so hopeful.
I'm going to cry.
I'm going to cry.
All right. right, but let's go back to Kylo Ren. Hold on, we'll cry later. Kylo Ren's redemption commentary. My goodness, Rian Johnson actually addresses this head on. And for me, what he says is perfect. And I wish that I could, like, if I were part of this large group in the fandom that I consider to be the hive of scum and villainy of the Star Wars fandom, if I were still a part of that group, where people were saying that, Kylo Ren's only good for dying. The only thing that he can accomplish at this point is to have a death that can avenge Han Solo. I mean, who thinks like that about a character in an epic story? Obviously not Rian Johnson, because here's what he has to say about it. There's a big part of the story that's yet to be written and not by me. So he's saying, I don't know about episode 9, but I don't think it's very interesting if the whole story is just, will Kylo Ren get his comeuppance? So like, will he pay for his crimes? He's a more complicated character than that, and I think he deserves a more complicated story than that. I don't see the point of trying to get behind his mask and learn more about him if all we're going to learn is, yeah, he's just an evil bad guy that needs to be killed.
Thank you, Rian Johnson. You've just confirmed what we've been saying for 2 years. Thank you so much.
It only took 30 seconds.
He's speaking directly to 90% of the traditional, not 90% of the traditional Star Wars fan, 90% of a traditional sector of the Star Wars fandom who's been saying this, who's been saying we are crazy and we don't know the true story. There's this, and it seems like he's speaking directly to them, so he knows it. And I'm glad he's clarifying it as clearly as he can. Although I know these people are not going to understand it. So.
Oh my God, I hope that Rian Johnson went online and read those ridiculous comments people made, and that he read some of our awesome comments, and he was like, yeah, you guys are totally spot on.
There were comments. There were on this article.
No, like the online discourse that was occurring back in 2015 and 2016.
Oh, of course.
When we were being told that we're dumb women, first of all, and also that we don't know Star Wars, because how is it possible that there's going to be a gray character in Star Wars? How is it possible that there's going to be kind of a vague line between good and evil when Star Wars is a moral story where the bad guy has to pay and the good guy is going to be good? Well, it doesn't make any sense.
Well, there have been grey characters, since the history of Star Wars started, in Legends and, even in the movies. But, I think this is where they're really going to explore it. But we all know what Star Wars is about, and the themes are about love, hope, forgiveness, and compassion. So, and people who are saying, like, Rey will not discover another side to Kylo Ren and learn to forgive him, while also learning stuff about herself, that she is a compassionate person. Yeah, come on, guys, come on. That's what Star Wars is about.
Yeah, no, it's good. Ryan has been dealing with the people with the negative reactions, and I think he's been addressing them directly, and he's been doing it really well, and I'm glad he's doing it.
I can see that you're upset, Anne. I want a t-shirt with that.
You want some ice with that, Burn?
Well, I think he's trying to be nice, but yeah.
But one thing that made me fall in love with Ryan's thought process and just admire him so much more was when he answered that one person who said that if you can relate to Kylo, then you're messed up. I don't relate to a mass murder. Which, first of all, come on, mass murder? Are we watching the same material? Because I wouldn't call him that. But whatever. And Ryan's response was that you don't have to identify with the things that he's doing necessarily, but if it's a well-written character, it's somebody that will reflect to you parts of yourself. So then you can have empathy for them and you can understand maybe where they're coming from, at least partly. And that's valuable, that's important, and that's actually part of why we have literature to begin with. So I just thought that he was so good at handling that kind of narrow-mindedness from fans. So I'm just very encouraged by everything I've seen of Ryan so far.
Yeah, me too.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about the article about Luke and Leia. So we start off with Luke Skywalker quietly walks aboard the Millennium Falcon alone. His old friends are gone. His old life is gone. He is ghost-like himself.
Oh.
The old Luke Skywalker is gone too. And that's heartbreaking, right?
It is.
We've been talking about it. The fact that it's going to be jarring for us to see that Luke is just not the same person that we were hoping for. And we're going to have to get used to him a little bit. He shares some thoughts about the process of thinking about it from his perspective. He talks about how it's an emotional scene to film. I'm sure it's going to be emotional for us to watch. I anticipate I'm going to be crying for sure.
I just want to question, how do you think Luke Luke will resolve his conflict with Kylo and Rey at the end of the movie? Where do you think he'll be at the end of the movie?
I think that Luke, for all of the fact that he's been out there on that island, he hasn't gained any clarity into what happened and what his role was, and that's why he makes almost the same mistake with Rey that he did with Kylo Ren. Like, he ends up pushing her towards, the dark side. So I think that when he sees them interacting, or he sees what they do for each other, then maybe he needs something to wake him up. Something has to happen. Obviously, Rey's arrival on the island is not enough. So he needs a wake-up call, and I think he's going to reconfigure his thinking, and he has to forgive Kylo Ren, and Kylo Ren has to forgive him. I don't know whether Kylo can do that in this movie, but I think Luke will forgive Kylo in this movie. He has to make some progress.
Saying that, you've just made me think, I remember you wanted, in our Luke podcast, you said you wanted a reconciliation between Luke and Leia, and I didn't think it would happen. You saying that has changed my mind.
Oh, wow.
I think Leia might be the one to fully wake him up and change his mind on Rey and Ren's relationship, because as you remember, it's quite a contrast between how Luke and Leia see Vader compared to how Leia and Luke see Kylo. Luke saw light in Vader, Leia didn't. Leia sees light in Kylo, as she very clearly said to Han in The Force Awakens. Luke probably does not. So Leia might call him out on this and really might hopefully start make him think, oh gosh, yeah, I'm a bit of a hypocrite. Let's try and look at him in a different way, however hard that might be, for lack of a better description.
Yeah, I mean, for me, that would be perfect.
Yeah, for Luke, I was just gonna comment, there were some scenes of him in the trailer, the spots, that he was crying, talking about Kylo. So I think I don't think he's angry at Kylo. I think he feels responsible in a way, and he feels sad in a way. So
I don't know about that. I think that he's not going to be thrilled to see Kylo and Rey interacting. I think that he thinks that Kylo is dangerous for Rey. So I think he doesn't. I don't know about him having forgiven him. We'll see. Probably because he hasn't forgiven himself. So maybe. It's easy to be angry at Kylo. This is all so complex that it almost worries me. I just said that how much I love Ryan and how much I trust him, but also, my goodness, all of this has to be resolved in 2 hours and a half. Like, how are we going to do it?
Yeah.
But anyway, one thing that encouraged me about, they don't say much in this teaser. That article is going to come out fully tomorrow on Monday as of the day of this recording. But they do mention that we're wondering whether Leia and Luke will reunite. And then the last line in that section is, not all of the storylines in The Last Jedi aim to break the heart. Some will fortify it. So for me, that's a good sign that probably they are going to have a nice reunion.
Oh, a nice sibling reunion.
Yeah.
Something we've been waiting for since the end of The Force Awakens, and especially since Paul Carey passed away, we were wondering whether it would happen or not.
Yeah, we need that closure, I think. So hopefully it'll work out.
Hopefully. I want to see it too.
Yeah. Any comments about Poe? He has just a few lines. I guess we've been talking about how Poe is going to be like the surrogate son for Leia. That just annoys the hell out of me to hear. But he is going to be the surrogate son for Leia. But there's some conflict between them, as evidenced by the 27 slaps that she gave him during filming. And some people are speculating about Poe has gone rogue. There's interesting speculation about that, because there's a line where it says, I don't remember where it came out, that Poe is feared in the First Order as much as he is in the Resistance. So wow, okay. And the idea that maybe he didn't agree with how Leia was managing things, and he decided to just go and resolve something on his own. So we don't really know at this point.
But at this time, because this we have that he has a new boss and he's worried about it. So it seems that he doesn't like the fact that he's changing. And I just thought that this one, he's worried about the new boss. I was thinking, how exciting. I go to the movie to see conflict, to see Star Wars to see a conflict with the boss, of course. I was like, oh my God. It was really boring, that one. Yeah, go ahead, Mary. I'm sorry.
I don't think he'll go rogue. I think maybe he might be slightly reckless in doing something, and Leia is probably like, why did you do that? You could have been killed. We need you for leadership in case, something happens to me, maybe. I think in one article, I can't remember which one, but it said she was kind of grooming him for command. So yeah, I think Leia is probably going to try and teach Poe how to lead the Resistance, not just soldiers and stuff, but maybe how to play the political game. And I think because it's not his territory, he's going to feel pressure, really feel the pressure on that, and he's going to struggle with it, I think, because I don't think he'll particularly like it. And then, of course, you've got Holdo. Now, have you guys read Leia, Princess of Alderaan?
I have not yet. No, I haven't, but I haven't started it.
Because in that, Holdo, every time I mention her name, I keep wanting to say Hoda from Game of Thrones. It's so difficult. But Holdo is I think is a really, old friend of Leia's, but, and they get on quite well in the book, but as it's been hinted quite a lot that, don't trust Holdo, just don't trust her. So I think, I don't know what it could be, but I think Holdo will betray the Resistance, or more personally, I think she'll betray Leia. I don't know how yet, but yeah, I think it could be the fact that, there was that huge Darth Vader is Leia's father that was revealed in Bloodline, because as we know, Rian Johnson was involved in the writing of that, so maybe that ties into it, and maybe Holdo wants personal revenge against Leia because she is the daughter of Darth Vader, and maybe that has something to do with it in her past. Maybe Vader killed someone she loved, or one of her family members, maybe, and so she wants revenge basically. And of course, maybe she kind of hides behind this kind of very flamboyant attitude, but maybe Poe sees through it, and of course he doesn't like her. Maybe that could come in conflict with Leia as well. Like Leia's like, I trust Holdo, and Poe doesn't. But this is just speculation. We'll see what happens in the film.
Yeah.
Well, wasn't there a spoiler about this like last year at some point where they were saying that Poe was going to lead a mutiny against Holdo? Do you remember that?
Yeah,
so that might go in line with what we've been talking about.
I think that might have been the Latina Review who reported that Leia was in a coma as well, and that Poe was rallying against Laura Dern's character as she was described then. So yeah, I don't think Leia will be in a coma anymore, but yeah, there could be some truth to that.
Yeah. Okay. So guys, before we close off this part of the discussion, is there anything else you wanted to talk about regarding the EW conversation?
Thank you, Rian Johnson, for confirming what we've been saying for 2 years.
First shot of Rey and Kylo in The Last Jedi together. Yay, kind of together.
Oh, just a quick thing actually I wanted to ask you about. What do you think of the covers? Like all of them?
I thought they were awesome. Yeah, I liked how Finn and Rey, they look like a couple actually.
Finn and Rose.
Finn and Rose. So funny. I promise I'm not making fun of Finn Rays. It just was a slip. Finn and Rose look like a couple. Like they look like they could be holding hands, the way that their bodies are turned towards each other. When I was like 13, I read a Cosmopolitan article that I shouldn't have read, where it talked about how body language can tell you a lot about sexual compatibility and intimacy. And it says that when couples align their hips, even if the rest of their bodies are turned away, it's a sign of intimacy. So I think the Finn and Rose are aligned in that way. The Holdo one, I don't care for so much. I don't really like her character all that much. I like Laura Dern a lot, though.
But they look so bizarre, that one.
It looks like Hunger Games, right? Doesn't it look like
Effie? Like Effie.
Like Effie's gonna send Poe into the Hunger Games arena.
That's the first thing I thought about when I saw that picture of Laura Dern in Vanity Fair, wasn't it? I was just like, what? Are they bringing the Hunger Games into this? Come on.
Yeah, it's too over the top. And then, the picture with Luke and Leia, I like that they're together, but I really love that picture of them that we saw for, was it the D23?
Vanity Fair?
Was it the Vanity Fair? Yeah, the Vanity Fair spread. That picture is so moving. This one, it's like, okay, Luke is pissed. Leia looks like she's gonna ground you, like angry mom. So poor Kylo. But of course the star cover is our beautiful babies. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's such a beautiful picture. And you're right, Denise. Definitely Rey protecting Kylo Ren. He's not even holding up his saber, He knows that she's got this covered.
And his face is soft, he's vulnerable, while her face is fierce. I love how they're, playing with the gender dynamics in this marketing. I'll see how it goes in the movie, but I'm expecting something cool like that.
I'm going to be honest, when I first saw the cover with Rey and Kylo, I wasn't impressed. I was just kind of like annoyed that they used the same poses again. I mean, we've seen those poses. Give us something new, please. But yeah, after what you've described, Denise, that's just perfect. That's a perfect analysis of that cover. For the rest of them, I really like the one between Poe and, I like all of the rest really. Poe and Holdo look like there's going to be conflict between them. I think that's exactly the look they're going for, which we've just been talking about. Luke and Leia, what really, again, with what you said, Lee, how you maybe changed my mind on that, on how Luke and Leia might have that reunion. I'm wondering if that cover is sort of like hinting towards that, and their different feelings on Kylo Ren, just because the expressions on their faces, but we'll see. As for Finn and Rose, I think Rose kind of looks badass, and again, I'll stress she's going to be the one who puts Finn in line. You say, no, you can't do that, you need to do this. That's what takes a hero. So yeah, I think she's gonna wear the pants in that relationship, for a lack of a better description.
That's very interesting because Rey's gonna wear the pants with the Kylo relationship. I think both of these men are actually more similar than we tend to think about them. They both crave discipline. They're both traitors. They both hate each other and hate themselves. So these women are gonna, whip them into shape. Ha. So one final thought I have about the cover is that when it first was revealed earlier today, that a lot of people were disappointed, like a lot of the hardcore Reylos, because they were saying like, oh, it's obviously photoshopped. They didn't bring them together for the photo shoot. Yeah, like you said, Mary, we had seen those pictures. Actually, they were leaked. So they obviously just kind of joined them together after the pictures were taken individually. And it doesn't look romantic, but remember, they're together on the same cover. They are looking as if they are aligned against a common foe. They don't look like they're fighting each other. They look like they're a team, and that says a lot. And then aside from that,
is it Snoke? Is it Snoke or Luke?
And then aside from that, the fact that if you recall, for the Attack of the Clones, there was a cover like that for Anakin and Padme. That they didn't look like a couple.
Oh yes, I remember that. Wasn't it the one where they were on Geonosis? They were back to back. Yeah.
And they both were holding weapons, They weren't rolling around in a field. They had a cover like that.
But their cover was weird, because Padme has a very weird pose. I mean, oh my God, what is that cover? And it was bizarre, but down with subtlety. But but I agree with you, and it's very meaningful. It's very meaningful because we also have Finn and Rose in another cover. So yeah. It's meaningful. It means a lot. Let's be happy about it.
Yes, and I am definitely very happy about the whole experience. So we're actually gonna stop our conversation here. We're gonna come back with more. We're gonna come back with more thoughts, just to talk a little bit about updates, and that's gonna be a shorter discussion. So don't forget to come back. And as usual, if you want to connect with us, you can email us at starwarsconnection09@gmail.com. You can subscribe to our Tumblr, our Twitter, and our Mixcloud. Until next time, may the Force be with you.